Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Seminoles Daily. I'm your host, Rob Krause, and today we're going to circle back and talk about the quarterback position as some news came about this weekend involving one of Florida State's top targets. And unfortunately, it's not particularly great news for the Seminoles. But first, I would like to thank all of you who have liked and subscribed to this channel and these videos and encourage you to please continue to like and subscribe and share these videos with anybody who you think wants to talk about Florida State or doesn't like Florida State and wants to maybe revel in the misery. Either way, let's get this channel built up. Let's get this thing going, man. Much love to all of you who have done this so far. And yeah, let's keep building this family together because this is Florida State. We are a family, and whether they're winning or losing, and they've been doing a lot of losing lately, we all bleed garnet and gold. And at the very least, this is a cathartic, therapeutic channel for you in some ways to discuss as the program continues to be in a bit of a, not a full spiral, we'll say, but not exactly a positive forward trajectory at the moment. And that unfortunately continued this weekend as the news came out from 24/7 reporter, national recruiting analyst Brian Doan, that wonderful Mons the Fourth, aka Champ Mons, the big strong kid out of Vero Beach, Florida, has put a crystal ball in, is that a crystal ball put in for him to attend Notre Dame, South Bend, the Fighting Irish. Last week, Mons had been trending towards FSU after some really nice and positive official visits and recruiting trips he had made the last couple of days and seemed to be really in favor of Mike Norvell and the Noles. But at the time, and I think maybe in a way not to jinx this or put the negative karma out, we felt fairly good about it, but we had also noticed that he had not actually announced his commitment to Florida State after that visit. And that's kind of something that, you know, not so much the writing on the wall as more just you'd really like to see a kid after a visit like that come out and announce, especially kind of this early in the game, to just come out and say like, "Hey, yeah, I'm with the Noles, man. I like what they're doing here. I like this. I'm gonna commit to them." But unfortunately, as kind of the history of Mike Norvell and his recruiting goes, he didn't secure that commitment, and the kid decided to take another trip. Now, we had mentioned Ohio State being one of the suitors, but we weren't too concerned about the Buckeyes. They had already had a kid in their class, so we weren't kind of too concerned about that. We did, however, have some nerves about Notre Dame because the Irish right now are a very good juggernaut of a program right now, particularly at recruiting. Marcus Freeman was a reputation up and coming as an ace recruiter. He gets to Notre Dame, and now you have Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman. You have a ace, tenacious recruiter in Marcus Freeman going to arguably the most prestigious college football program in America with a large history, a large fan base, a large NIL package, all the things that go into recruiting this day and age. South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame has it going on in spades. And that was going to be the concern when Champ decided to take his visit up there. And sure enough, he had a great weekend. Lots of pictures, lots of smiles, lots of happy feelings and thoughts. And again, as that came out that Brian Doan says, there is now a crystal ball to the Irish for Champ. Now, the one thing we have to remember is that it's just a crystal ball. Champ hasn't announced anything yet. He hasn't set a commitment date. He hasn't said, I'm sticking with the Irish. I'm going with them. I'm still weighing some options. So there is still a chance for Florida State to, stay on this kid, get back in the game, stay positive, keep working the vibe, keep working the relationship with them. But it is a particularly bad trend right now that, as we discussed last week, this would now be the third quarterback target that you've identified in the last, month and a half that has either committed somewhere else or is rumored to be committing somewhere else. So no, it is not particularly great vibes right now in the recruiting battle, in the recruiting of a quarterback position for Mike Norvell. And again, it's another symptomatic issue that Mike always seems to get in on these kids early in the process. And then once they kind of blow up, all of a sudden the bigger, wealthier, more dominant programs right now who don't have a coach on the hot seat can come in, bam, swipe, get this kid on their campus, and then 2 days later it's getting crystal ball that he's not coming to you, he's going there. So there is a lot of work to do if you're Florida State and Mike Norvell to try to maybe get this kid back into the fold. That's the one thing you can't do. You can't give up. You always got to keep these relationships open. Always got to keep the bridges unburned, if you will, to make sure that you're always in this fight. Because hey, who knows? Maybe Notre Dame, like somebody else, they want to take two quarterbacks in the class. They sign another kid, and Champ's not about that. Maybe he just wants to be the lone kid in the class, and he gives Mike Norvell a call back and say, "Hey, Coach, I flirted with Notre Dame, but trust me, you were always always right there in the mix, and I'd like to be your bell cow quarterback." So fingers crossed. Hopefully that kind of goes that way. Now, as far as what Florida State's plan B, which technically I guess we're really calling it like plan D at this point, is Logan Flaherty. He is a young man out of Port Charlotte, Florida, 6'2", 180, composite 3-star, currently committed to Central Florida. Now, the thing with that is you're saying, Rob, well, he's committed. Yes, and that's kind of what, again, I wanted to reinforce on the Champ Mons recruitment and the Flaherty commitment is that, look, we are still a long ways away from National Signing Day, from early signing day and full National Signing Day. Okay, so there's going to be a lot more kids who are committed now, who will then decommit, who will then look to somebody else, maybe get put up a new top 5, etc. So it's your job as a coach to always be recruiting and always be trying to get a kid, keep him there, then also flip that kid and also work that relationship there. So while yes, it is difficult in the case of a kid like Logan Flaherty that you're trying to flip to go from UCF to FSU, it's not unheard of. Mike Norvell famously, flipped Chubba Purdy in his first class. He signed. That kid was committed to Louisville for, weeks, months on end. And then Mike Norvell takes the Florida State job and built up a previous relationship with him at Memphis and was able to secure his commitment. Ultimately, it didn't work out, as we know, but still, that's just an example of the type of things that'll happen between now and December. Is you're going to have some flips, you're going to have some verbal commitments, you're going to have some decommitments. Hopefully, you keep the pressure on this kid like Logan Flaherty, keep working that angle, keep working that relationship, and sure enough, maybe down the road in early, late spring, early summer, all of a sudden he decommits from UCF and he signs with Florida State. That's kind of the goal because you want to have a quarterback in every class, sometimes two. The point being is that you can never have enough QBs and you can never have enough linemen. And while you maybe want to recruit one quarterback a class, it is imperative that you consistently target and try to get the best quarterback you can, as we said, to really be that guy to build that core. Because as it stands right now, when you look at this depth chart and you look at this room, yes, there's some talented young men in there, but it's not exactly a who's who going on right now. It's not the 93 quarterback room when you had Charlie Ward and Danny Cannell and John Stark and Thad Busby, and then, mid 90s when you had Dan Kendra and Thad Busby and Chris Wenke, it's not a loaded room right now, as we have Ashton Daniels, the Stanford transfer, who by all projections is still, I think, your leader in the clubhouse turn to become the number one guy. But after that, you got Kevin Sperry. Now, Sperry, we all know, played some games last year, got some good work in, had a couple of nice plays against Stanford, almost won that Stanford game at the end, poor referee call. But, he had showed a lot of promise, and there's the kind of the belief that he could be the guy. You also have the young man, Jaden Jones, who, by all accounts and purposes, dual threat, very athletic. Coaches very much like the dynamic he brings, mobility to the room. But, again, still, we're talking about 18, 19-year-old freshmen, redshirt sophomores, etc. You really want to keep the pipeline going, and getting a top quarterback is vital. And again, you always want, first and foremost, that homegrown quarterback. You cannot keep going every single year into the transfer portal to constantly get a guy, which unfortunately has been Mike's history. We talked about it last week. We'll talk about it again. Okay, his best quarterback, Jordan Travis, a guy he inherited. He even brought Mackenzie Milton in that 2021 season because he didn't quite trust Jordan Travis, and he had lost the recruitment of Luke Altmaier. He then, after Jordan Travis goes out, he has to bring in DJ Uiagalelei, who was on his third team in 3 years. Last year, what does he do? He goes out and gets Thomas Castellanos to try to run Gus Malzahn's system. Again, another transfer, another kid who originally Mike had recruited as a running back. And that's a little backstory about Thomas Castellanos is that Florida State was heavy on that kid because he's an athlete to be the running back, but he wanted to play quarterback. He goes to UCF. Has a good couple years. Follows his quarterback coach up to Boston College. Has a pretty good year at BC and really kind of almost like took it personal in his 2 games against FSU at BC. He really lit the Seminoles up. So that's why there was some excitement last year when you had signed him and brought him in that maybe, just maybe, this kid can kind of keep it going. And, he had a great first game against Bama and a great September. But I think, the regression to the mean of his, quarterback ability, shown through. And towards the late part of the season, it just kind of, it was who he was. And he wasn't exactly the elite quarterback that we had hoped he had been, that he could be at that position. And unfortunately struggled. And ironically enough, he is now rumored to be open to a position change at the NFL. He's been working out as a slot receiver and running back in that regard. So Mike wasn't particularly off on, I think, his overall evaluation of Thomas Castellanos' future in the sport, which I think he has to get some credit for. But again, we look at the situation and what you do and what you've built this room and this program based off of. And that has been really a lack of stability at the quarterback position because you keep bringing in transfers because you can't secure a guy out of the high school ranks and develop him and build him up and have the confidence in him to let him grow through the growing pains. Again, we talked about Luke Kromenhoek, who was really the highest rated quarterback that Mike Norvell had signed up to this point, and a lot of high ceiling projections for this kid, and you had to rush him. You threw him in early. It didn't work out. You had to fire your offensive coordinator. You bring in a new guy who's got a new system, and Luke doesn't agree with that. And then you had Brock Glenn, also who had you had recruited, had originally committed to Ohio State, and you were able to flip his recruitment back over to Florida State. Now some of that was also Ohio State taking a higher rated target. I think Brock kind of saw the writing on the wall there and made his move back to Tallahassee. But still, even he, wasn't really greatly developed and rushed early into this. And that's kind of the situation that we have here at Florida State is that you keep bringing in portal guys for 1-year rentals without the understanding that you've got a guy 2-3 years behind him waiting in the wings, ready to take over. The natural progression you were hoping should have been, okay, we got Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis is going to be our guy for the next couple of years. Boom, he's done. Then all of a sudden, okay, we got DJ for a year. Maybe we can, bridge that year. And then we got Luke or Brock, year 2 in the system. They're, getting ready to play and go. But everything just went in 2024. And you had to just, punt essentially and throw these young men to the wolves. And they lost their confidence. You lost confidence in them. The team lost confidence in everybody. And you had this disastrous season that you're still trying to kind of make up for. So that's why it is so vital to get a good, talented, elite, bell caliber athlete in that system and promise them that, look, we're not just going to always portal over you. We're going to let you play. We're going to let you grow. We're going to have some growing pains. That's why I think come the fall, if Ashton Daniels is the leader, is the starter, that it is not the worst thing to continue to have Kevin Sperry thrown into that mix and to keep him working and to keep him in the rotation, to keep him going and, throw him some reps, throw him some time in those games because he is really, if you're Mike, your last chance. Because the only way that I foresee Mike keeping his job, particularly with his quarterback recruiting, is if Kevin Sperry is the starter by the end of the season and you have won 7-8 games. And you can look positive and say, okay, yeah, we didn't have the best season at 7-5 at 8-4, but man, we have found our quarterback. We have got our guy for the next at least 2 years to really build around and get this program back up to the level we expect. And that's why it's so important for Kevin Sperry to become this guy for Mike Norvell and for him to also continue to keep the relationship going with Champ Mons, just in case that Notre Dame does decide, hey, you know what, there's another higher rated prospect that we can get in here, and then give Champ a call and say, hey man, Notre Dame, they already got another guy. Why don't you come back here in the fold with us? So that's kind of, things to keep an eye on the next few months as we move into the summer. So in recap, Champ Mons, not great news. Sounds like he's leaning towards the Irish. But again, he hasn't signed anything. So if you're Florida State, keep the pressure on, keep recruiting him, keep offering the NIL package totals up. And if you're Mike Norvell, just pray and hope that you have developed and signed a good quarterback come the fall. And hopefully you can keep your job that way. But that's it's going to be us for today on Seminoles Daily. Like I said, we'll talk more quarterback tomorrow. Probably go back to the DB room, talk a little safety. There's an intriguing safety prospect that I would like to touch on for the Seminoles. And also, going to throw a little draft prep in. The NFL draft is fastly approaching. We are less than 48 hours to the NFL draft, which is low-key one of my favorite weekends. I love when these college kids and the pros meet together and we get to talk about the prospects. So we'll probably talk a little bit about some guys on the Florida State side that you should pay attention to this weekend as they hopefully get to achieve their dream of getting their name called and playing professional football. So lots of good stuff this week coming your way here at Seminoles Daily. I'm your host, Rob Krause, and I will talk to you later.